Welcome to the Galloway Township Board of Education. This is a regular meeting, April 8th. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Avery, Dr. Bashir Blau, Mr. Gentile, Ms. Goldberg, Mr. Brem, Mr. Nord, Dr. Parmenter, Mr. Dace, and Mrs. Carmen.
Here. All rise for a flag salute led by Ms. Madeline Avery. Thank you. In accordance with Public Law 231, notice this meeting was provided to the press occurring in the Galloway Township Municipal Building on January 23rd, 2019. We have approval of minutes from March 18th, 2019. May I have a first to approve the minutes? May I have a second? Any abstentions? Richard, Rosemary, and Madeline. And Dr. Parmenter just entered if you guys didn't see. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Reading of communications, please.
Thank you, President Carmen. Good evening, everyone. We have one item, which is a letter from Robert L. Bumpus, who's our Assistant Commissioner, related to the NJQSAC review, and those results will be shared in the presentation.
Thank you. Moving on to presentations.
Yes, there are two presentations this evening, so because we are in the gym, we do have a smaller screen, so hopefully everyone can still see.
Okay, bud?
First presentation this evening, I'm out of order. The first presentation this evening is related to the student safety data system. There are times to charm, and thank you for your patience. This is the Student Safety Data System. This is a presentation that is required by the Department of Education. And those of you who have been on the board a long time or regular attendees at the board meeting will know that for years we gave a presentation based on reporting into the electronic violence and vandalism system. Last year, the state changed both the system and the reporting requirements of this type of report. One of the major changes was this now includes the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report, both confirmed and alleged. In the past, if there was an alleged hit that was investigated but not found to meet the state's definition of hit, it was not reported. Now, as the schools go through that process, they are required to report. So I am not going to read this to you. This is just the law that is related to this type of reporting. So what happens is, as a situation happens at the school and it is investigated and handled administratively, that information is entered into the state system. That information is then compiled, and twice a year we need to do a presentation. And I want to thank our director, Ms. Christina Presto, who oversees this process with the schools and who also put together this evening's presentation. So the data I'm about to show you is from the first half of this year, September to December of 2018. So there are different categories, and on each of these slides on the left you'll see the name of the category, how the state defines the category, and how many instances of that category occurred in report period 1. Just because something is listed here does not mean it's one of these 8 things. This is everything that the state required you to report if it happened under this category. For the board's information, anything that fit in this category was already reported to you because these are out-of-school suspension type incidents. So that comes in the report that you receive on a monthly basis. Obviously, when it's a more serious incident, I also share that with you via the bulletin. So I want to remind everybody, there are well over 3,000 children in the school district, and there were 8 instances across the entire district. When we go to vandalism, you can see there was 1 instance, and I will say this, in some instances vandalism could happen from someone inside the school, but could also happen on a Saturday night, and we don't even know who the perpetrator was. When it does happen outside of school hours, just like when it happens inside school hours, we'll either investigate or we seek the assistance of the police. Substance abuse, and this is based on possession, sale, distribution, or use, or if we suspect a student to be under the influence and they refuse the exam. In the first half, we do not have any instances reported. Weapons, and you can see there is a definition, and this also could be possessing a weapon, trying to sell or distribute a weapon, or using it. We had 1 instance across the district in the first half of the year. Now, this is new, and you can see that Ms. Lopresto put that in capital letters. In the past, there were certain instances that if it was a special ed student involved, and it involved in or out of school suspension, we were required to report that to the state. The state now requires for any student at any grade level, general or special ed, who is removed for at least a half a day. So that means a student will be placed in school suspension for a half a day minimum or more. Or a student is placed on out-of-school suspension for a half a day or more. So across the entire school district from September through December, again remember, well over 3,000 students, we had 108 things that fit into this category. And again, you've never seen a number like that before because this was never a category that was required to be reported. The report changed. In the past, we did not have to give you this detail. And even though we know this in district and this information is on our website, When it comes down to HIP, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, we are required to report who the investigators were for those instances. So the way our district handles this, kindergarten through 8th grade, is that the assistant principals work with our counselors who have been trained as the school anti-bullying specialists. You may be wondering why Pomona is not listed. There were no alleged HIBs at Pomona, and we certainly hope not, especially considering it's the preschool. Should there be an allegation, Dr. Gross, as the principal, would handle that, and he would be assisted either by one of the counselors from another school, from the child study team member, or from Ms. LaPresto, who is the district anti-bullying coordinator. I'm pleased to say that did not need to happen. So then we report in details about HIB, and so this is where someone made an allegation, a student, a parent, a teacher reported that there's possibly an act of harassment, intimidation, or bullying. And these are 11 times that when the investigation was done, it was not found to fit the state's definition of HIB. It is possible that it was a different kind of offense against our student code of conduct, but it was not found to be HIB. When we look at confirmed, there were 6 instances that were investigated and did meet the state's definition of HIB. So then we have to look at what are the different categories. So when we think about HIB, one of the parts of the definition, is it against a protected class or another distinguishing characteristic? And so this looks at the different protected classes as well as that catch-all, other distinguishing characteristics. And of the 6 that were confirmed to be HIB, this was the basis of what occurred. I should point out again, so many students and only 6. What types of things do we do? And if you think of our extensive and detailed student code of conduct, all these different types of things are given as consequences depending on the particular act. And that is all outlined in our code of conduct. You may also recall that we've been doing a lot on making sure that when students are experiencing behavioral difficulties, something that falls under HIB or something that's another type of behavior that's not appropriate, we also make sure that we do interventions and supports. And you see this one category down here, we're working a lot on restorative practices, trying to, if a relationship has been broken, to repair that relationship. If a student needs to understand better, for example, a student might watch a video or read an article to help them understand better what aligns with the act that they committed. So we also do trainings, and some of these are whole faculty, some of these are small group, some of these might be for the anti-bullying specialists, and then there's also programs for students. Again, a lot of the things in our social schools curriculum, in the work that the counselors do, in classroom lessons, in assembly programs that we bring in the schools, there are a lot of different things that we do proactively, as well as sometimes in response to behavior that we are seeing. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or respond to any comments. I'm going to move into the second presentation, and then I know President Carmen will again ask after both presentation for the board as well as the public. Again, if you're a board member or regularly at our meetings, You know that this year was our district's turn to undergo state monitoring known as NJQSAC. It occurs every 3 years. And so the item under communications was a letter from our assistant commissioner and our county superintendent about our results. I will quickly remind everyone that there is a process and there are documents called district performance reviews. And this is the way we look and assess the school district, and the state gives us very specific steps we need to follow. There are 5 areas: instruction and program, fiscal, operations, personnel, and governance. In our district, we form a committee that includes both the membership required by the state, and we actually exceed that membership. We work as an administrative team along with committee members. We do both subcommittees for each of the DPRs and worked as a committee of the whole. Here are the committee members that were involved this year. And I again want to thank them. So the results. In the fall, when we went to submit QSAC, on the left you will see the scores that we gave ourselves from the work of the committee. The State Department, people from actually the Atlantic County Office of Education came in. They did some of the monitoring on site, although much of it they did electronically. We had to upload a lot of files and send them a lot of documents. And so you can see on the right the scores from the Department of Ed. And I will start at the bottom with personnel. You can see that they deducted 2 points. That specifically was related to tracking substitutes. And you can't have a sub in a position for more than 20 days if they do not have the exact certificate. We have a system for doing that. And when they were on site, they randomly pulled files to see, is it working? Well, every file they pulled, we had done exactly what we were supposed to do. We met every requirement. However, they felt our system, according to the state guidelines, was not automated enough, and so they deducted 2 points. Under operations, we had given ourselves 100. And it's interesting, you hear operations, and a lot of people think facility side of operations, but a lot of this is about Department of Ed requirements and submission of various reports. So there were some reports that they felt we had either submitted late or incomplete. I contacted them and asked them, could they name for us what reports they were? One of the reports, Ms. Nixon was able to provide me with documentation that showed we were not late for that report. We had submitted it in a timely fashion. It was related to homelessness and the district of record and things related to that. We were able to very clearly show that we had submitted on time, but then we received a letter from the state that required us to open it up because of a ruling the state had done and we had to resubmit it. So we do believe we should get credit for that. There were, however, some things related to a report related to HIB that with the transition from one administrator to the next, we did miss a deadline, I believe, by 3 days. And so we lost 5 points there. There was one other question of another report that we felt we submitted on time. I have not gotten an answer to that. In all candor, an 80 is passing, so although we prefer our hundreds, all of these scores in the mid and high 90s are very, very good scores. I will take a moment and talk about instruction and program. Instruction and program is divided into 2 main areas. Part of instruction and program is simply about state test scores. They look at proficiency, they look at growth, They look at subgroups. It's a whole myriad of items. Up until this year, those items totaled 40 of the 100 points. This year, the state decided that they were going to be worth 60 of the 100 points. We did not earn all 60 points. The other piece of instruction and program is curriculum, lesson planning, all the things that actually relate to the day-to-day instruction. We earned every point in that area. So that was worth 40 points, and we received all 40 points. However, when you add the two together, by 1 point, we missed the required score of 80. And we've talked before, last spring was the toughest testing results we've ever had, and it happens to be that they are the results that count for the QSAC that happened this year. So what does that mean? It means, A, as I mentioned, I still am waiting for an answer on those two items, but we have to prepare what's called a district improvement plan to say, how are we going to address that our test scores were not as good as we should be? We are not concerned about writing this plan because this plan is already in place. We have not been as pleased with our test scores, and as we've talked about before at board meetings, at budget meetings, in the language arts side, we have identified that we are not doing as well in writing. This year, we piloted a writing program. I happened to attend a meeting before today's board meeting with Mr. Hinman, or Dr. Hinman, the director who oversees writing, with the teachers that piloted the new writing program. It is going extremely well. Obviously, in writing this plan, we are looking at both parts of language arts, writing and reading, as well as looking at areas we can improve in math as well. We take a multifaceted approach in terms of looking at our pacing guides, looking at the materials we're using, looking at the training we're providing for our teachers. So we need to pull a committee together to work on that plan, and that we are in the process of doing that. What will be interesting is if when we take what is no longer the part, which is now the student learning assessment, this spring, and we get the results, they will run the numbers because mid-next year, they do a check-in. How are you doing with the district improvement plan? Some districts, they lost points on that 40-point side. The curriculum or instruction or things like that, we've earned all those points. So really it comes down to, can we earn and improve our test scores? Without QSAC, that already was a goal and already something we are working on. Lastly, I believe overall these results are very positive and want to acknowledge the hard work, because this is every staff member. Not just myself or Ms. Nixon and other administrators who lead this work, but each and every staff member contribute to this. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or respond to any comments.
I have a question for you. What effect on the district does it have? Us getting,
I know I can't hear you, especially in this room.
us getting the 79 and the 1 factor, what effect does that have on the district from New Jersey? Is there a penalty?
There is no penalty. Like it has nothing to do with funding or anything like that. Basically, we have to submit this district improvement plan. They will decide are they agreeable with our plan, and then partway through next year, they'll come in and check the progress toward the plan. And so basically, if a district did not pass several of these, that's a much more intensive intervention from the state, but they know very well that the thing they're looking for is not only what we're doing, but what, for example, do this year's test scores look like? What will next year's test scores look like? And that's how they'll follow up.
How many points did we get in the test scores? Did we get 39?
Yes, because Dr. Parmenter, if you take the 40 that we got every point on the non-test score side. To get to the 79, we got 39 of the 60 available points.
Okay, that's what's confusing me, and I'm basing that on a letter that says we didn't satisfy at least 80% of the weight indicator score this section.
Right. So if you think about it, you need 80 points for the state to consider you passing or even high performing. So in that one section, instruction and program, we only got 79 of the 100 points.
So, this is happening with all districts. Do you think that if they do not satisfy at least 80%, that they have to do a district improvement?
Oh, absolutely. That is in all the outline of the state regulation, yes.
And with this plan, how long do we have to correct it?
That's a great question. What's interesting and what we talked about when I met with Dr. Hinman and Mrs. Napoli, who oversee language arts and math, we had the discussion is when we do this year's student learning assessment, the replacement for PARC, we will get some of those results late in the summer and the other in the fall. It's very possible if we improve and analyze those results, we don't know if those results get us out of this improvement status for instruction and program, or if we have to wait all the way until next year. That level of detail we have not been given. We are meeting again to go over the plan, develop the plan, and then when we submit it, we'll get more information from the county office.
Okay, this is my last question.
Sure.
Do you know if other K-8 districts in this area had deficiencies like ours?
I have not talked to my colleague, but we have a county meeting on Friday where this is a topic. This is what I will tell you in the history of this, what I know. If you are a larger district, if you have a higher percentage of free and reduced lunch, it is more likely that you are going to have this happen. And I will tell you, the last 2 rounds of QSAC, 3 years ago and 3 years before that, we did not have full monitoring because we had been meeting all of the required benchmarks for all the rules. And so what happened this year, because the state changed the DPRs and changed many of the rules, including the 60-40 split for instruction and program, everyone had to have full monitoring. So we have not had full monitoring the last 2 rounds because we had been doing so well. I know there are other districts in this county and throughout the state, similar to ours and dissimilar, that have had improvement plan, mid-year review. This is the first time in years that this has happened.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs.
You're welcome.
Quick question. How different is this year's state assessment from, I mean, I want like a 30-second. Is it shorter time? Is it?
Yes, probably the biggest change is they have shortened the amount of time for the test. When New Jersey decided to move away from the Common Core, they did not totally rewrite the standards, they made tweaks. And now for this year, they have made tweaks to the test, including making it shorter. Mr. Hinman, Dr. Hinman, I got to get used to that, and Mrs. Napoli have shared with teachers any changes, and they looked at our pacing guides and things like that to help make sure we're spending and focusing on those areas that we expect to be tested. I will also tell you that what the test looks like this year, it may not look like next year, because we have been told that on this year's test there will be many pilot questions that won't count as they look to redesign the whole assessment. Thank you.
Moving on to superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, President Carmen. Just to give a general update to the board and the public, the district configuration study team has been meeting every other week since March, and we really have made tremendous progress. We have studied a number of possible configurations. Our next meeting is next Tuesday, and at that meeting, we will be looking to pull everything together to talk about which of the scenarios, if any, the committee feels are viable, and looking at what are the positives, what are any concerns, and then with that scenario, what might there be in terms of facilities or personnel or those other categories. If needed, we will have one more meeting on April 30th to make sure that when the May board meetings come, we are prepared to present a full report to the board and the public. Student enrollment is there for your information. In district, we have 3,313 students. If we add in students at special services, private schools for special education, home instruction, charter, preschool, private places, and Head Start, actually 3,432 students. Also is the out-of-school suspension report, the HIB report from March 7th through April 3rd, and there was also one resolution related to the HIB report from the last meeting.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report presented to the board on March 11th for the reporting period of February 20th through March 6th, 2019?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blau? Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Noor?
Yes.
Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Curriculum instruction, please.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, we no longer read every item, so I will just go through them quickly. In curriculum and instruction this evening, we have things related to Stockton students, for middle school students to do different trips for curriculum or extracurricular activities, as well as for Ridge Road students to go to Apsagami. In addition to that, we have home instruction for students, and the details are listed.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve items 1 through 5 under curriculum instruction?
So moved.
Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blau? Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Noor?
Yes.
Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Finance and school operations, please.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Ms. Nixon.
Resolution 1 is to accept the following tuition receivable student. Resolution 2 is to approve submission of the reallocated Title I grant amendment number 1. Resolution 3 is to approve joining our participation in a cooperative agreement. And Resolution 4 and 5 are to approve training and out-of-district travel.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve items 1 through 5 under finance and school operations?
So moved.
Thank you. Any board comment? Yes.
It's just an addition to.
Any other board comment? Is there any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Noor? Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blau? Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Facilities and maintenance.
Resolution 1 is to approve DEC electrical contractors for installation of new generators at Arthur Grant Elementary School, Pomona Preschool. The other bids received are listed below. Resolution 2 is to approve disposal of property, surplus property with govdeals.com for disposal.
Can I have a motion to approve items 1 and 2 under facilities and maintenance?
Second.
Is there any board comment? Is there any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blau? Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Noor? Dr. Parmenter? Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Personnel, please. Oh, wait, did I skip? I'm sorry. Community use of school facilities, my apologies.
Thank you. We have items for facility use by Galloway Renegade Cheer, Galloway United Youth Soccer, and the Mainland Baptist Church.
Can I have a motion to approve items 1 through 4 under community use of school facilities?
So moved.
Any board comment? Any public comment? May I have roll call?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blau? Mrs. Avery? Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Nord?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmichael.
Yes. Now personnel, please.
Thank you. As always, out of respect, I will read the retirements verbatim. Item 1, resolution to accept with regret the letter of intent to retire from Patty Lang, teacher at Roland Rogers Elementary School, effective June 30th, 2019. Mrs. Lang has worked in the Galloway Township Public School District for 34 years, and her dedication and service to students and staff are appreciated by our entire school family.
May I have a motion to approve item 1 under personnel?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have roll call?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blau? Mr. Grimm? Mr. Nord?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 2 is a resolution to accept, with regret, the letter of intent to retire from Lewis Butch Massey, maintenance worker, Galloway Township Public Schools, effective September 3rd, 2019. Mr. Massey has worked in the Galloway Township Public School District for 27 years, and his dedication and service to students and staff are appreciated by our entire school family.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve item 2 under personnel?
So moved.
Is there any board comment?
Yes,
Yes.
Mike, and then, Coach Massey, who's working here before I did in '95, they did a great job in maintaining our buildings as well as the rest of our maintenance.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. Any other board comment? Is there any public comment? May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blau? Mrs. Avery? Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm? Mr. Nord?
Yes, correct.
Dr. Parmenter? Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes.
Item 3, resolution to accept, with regret, the letter of intent to retire from Mary Beth Wegman, nurse at Roland Rogers Elementary School, effective June 30th, 2019. Mrs. Wegman has worked in the Galloway Township Public School District for 18 years, and her dedication and service to students and staff are appreciated by our entire school family.
Can I have a motion to approve item 3 under personnel?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blau? Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm? Mr. Nord?
Yes,
Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 4, resolution to accept, with regret, the letter of intent to retire from Carol Demarest, classroom assistant at Roland Rogers Elementary School, effective June 30th, 2019. Mrs. Demarest has worked in the Galloway Township Public School District for 18 years, and her dedication and service to students and staff are appreciated by our entire school family.
May I have a motion to approve item 4 under personnel?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have roll call, please?
Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blau? Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Nord?
yes,
Dr. Parmenter? Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes.
Item 5, resolution to accept, with regret, the letter of intent to retire from Teresa Reed, Terry, secretary at Arthur Grant Elementary School, effective May 3rd, 2019. Mrs. Reed has worked in the Galloway Township Public School District for 14 years, and her dedication and service to students and staff are appreciated by our entire school family.
May I have a motion to approve item 5 under personnel?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery?
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blau? Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Nord?
yes, correct.
Dr. Parmenter?
Yes.
Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes.
Thank you. The remaining resolutions in this section include include a letter of resignation from a food service worker, family leave requests from various staff members with the details listed, a salary increase for Dr. Hinman for earning his doctorate as per the negotiated agreement, substitute teachers, and substitute custodial workers.
Can I have a motion to approve items 6 through 13 under personnel?
So moved.
Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile.
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter. Mrs. Avery.
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blau. Ms. Goldberg.
Yes.
Mr. Grimm. Mr. Noor.
Yes.
Vice President Dace.
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Supplemental personnel, please.
Yes, for supplemental positions, we have staff attending the novice teacher training program, staff to work diversity night at Galloway Township Middle School, note that is funded by Title I, and staff to stay after school for DLM, Dynamic Learning Map, so that is the alternate assessment for certain special needs students, and that is funded through Title IIA.
Can I have a motion to approve items 1 through 3 under supplemental personnel?
So moved.
Is there any board comment? Is there any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gentile.
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter.
Yes.
Mrs. Avery. Dr. Bashir Blau. Ms. Goldberg.
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes.
Mr. Noor.
Yes.
Vice President Dace.
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Moving on to policy, Mr. Gentile, do you have an update?
Yes, there's a number of policies attached to the attachment section of the agenda. This week I didn't have a chance to really look at some of the field voting earlier, and I'm afraid there might be some clerical error with regard to the policies. It looks like we copied all of the odd numbered pages, not the even numbered pages, which actually have some substantive changes. Looking at our policy with regard to the formulation, adoption, amendment of policy, I don't know if that's necessarily fatal for the first reading, but I would suggest that perhaps we could have an application, a motion rather, to approve the condition upon the administration at every meeting so they can set the time to get the completed policies out to us. I don't think it's fatal for the first reading on my read of policy 1311, but because I don't even get approved well this way. So I don't know if they're
Sure. Then I will ask for a motion to approve items 1 through 6 under policy, conditioned upon getting the revised policies out.
Yeah, and President Carmen, I will note that first reading doesn't approve them anyway, that between the first and second reading, changes can be made.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve items 1 through 6 under policy, please?
Second.
Is there any board comment? Any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Goldberg.
Yes.
Mr. Noor.
Yes.
Mrs. Avery.
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blau. Mr. Gentile.
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter.
Yes.
Vice President Dace.
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Moving on to notice of public meetings.
Thank you. On April 29th, we have the public budget hearing and a regular meeting. And then in May, we have meetings on May 13th and May 20th. All of those meetings are in the middle school cafeteria. You also have a list of all the upcoming spring concerts. This Thursday's Safety Forum, the Ed Foundation People of the Year on Friday, and the retirement reception in May.
Thank you. Is there any public comment this evening to come before the Board of Education? Sure, yes. If you could just come to the microphone, state your name and whether or not you're a Galloway resident. Oh, if there's a sign-in sheet. Just sign your name, yeah. Yeah, sure.
My name is Bob Muller, resident of Galloway Township, specifically Blue Heron Pines. I'm a member of our Blue Heron Pines Community Relations Committee. We work very closely with all of the political entities from the state to the township to the county, as well as Board of Education here at region. Our main interest, of course, has been not only the welfare of students and everyone in Galloway, but also taxes. We work very closely with the superintendent in the past, and also at our request at the state to try to push certain things. With the budget coming up, we have a handout that we'd like to pass out.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Several of you have seen this document before.
I think we've met before, right?
The document shows the Galloway Township as a whole, the tax rates from 2013 to 2015. entire community able to hold the tax rate in Galloway flat as an overall. The township continues to do its part with a decrease, probably another decrease this year. And we're pretty certain that the county is going to be decreasing its tax rate. We then come before the school board for your budget to please ask, and I have to thank the superintendent. Last year we made a request relative to state aid. And I believe last year was supposed to go to the max back to up because of that state aid kept promises. And that was greatly appreciated, so I have to compliment everybody on that. We continue to lose residents, right? We go out of state because New Jersey is simply the highest tax state in the union, unfortunately. We're asking that this year, last year as a whole, we were able to hold, even though the regional school system went up, and even though the Galloway Township went up just again. This year, regional may also go down. So we have one board in front of us who has an opportunity, if the expenses are controlled, for the first time in Galloway, to get us an opportunity to not keep the tax base just flat, but to actually get a decrease. So we ask you, please, take every opportunity. I know this is a very conscientious school board. My wife's ex-teacher, ex-administrator actually, so we're very big on STEM and everything else, but taxes are hurting us. We have people who are leaving the state because of it. So,
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. My name is Ned Pasquarone. I'm also a member of Bob's Liaison Committee and a resident of Blue Heart Pines. I was crafty a teacher for 26 years. So I come and I taught high school. I taught everything from English classes to AP classes. I know the importance of putting money for excellence in education. And I'm torn coming in front of you because for years I was in a district, it was a black versus white regional district, where the budget was voted down every year. But we did manage to hold the excellence that all of the teachers were dedicated to. I swore that I would never become one of those old people that did nothing but complain about taxes. But it sort of breaks my heart. I don't know if you're familiar with the village of Blue Heart Pines. We are not an over 55 community. And what we are seeing happen is a lot of our older residents that are on fixed incomes are leaving. Now, I may look at this in a rather simplistic way, but because we're not an over 55, that means that young people put a burden on this. So by having a lot of our older people fleeing, it seems to me that you're losing out. Because now you've got these children that are coming in. Believe me, I didn't want to go in over 55. I love children. Like I said, I taught for 26 years. But you're crushing some of our residents. And it just breaks my heart. I remember when I was in the school system, there is some winner. And you don't have to lower your standards as far as education is concerned. Please take us into consideration. I'm with a lot of friends. Presumably I was one of the community except for Bob. Please take that into consideration. And again, I know there's a little bit of wiggle room. Please try to do a little bit for us. Blue Heart Pines and a lot of the other residents you have. Thank you. Yes.
Could I have a couple of questions or comments on your chart you passed out? Between 2013 and 2014, that was a re-evaluation
yes, sir.
that was screwed up twice. And we have had minimal increases after that reevaluation took place. The state owes us how many millions of dollars?
We're 7 million?
5 million underfunded.
5 million underfunded
Just
by
for
the
1 year.
state. And our tax rate really went down at this point from last year. We didn't increase as much as, we increased less than what it was last year. So it helped somewhat to get more ratables, but the state's got to use the gambling revenue or something to give us, in other districts, what they're entitled to. We are a personnel-driven district, and we have this fight every year, and we do what's best for our children and the taxpayers that we can do with the revenues we have.
Well, do you have any feel for what's coming up? Do you think it's going to go up this year?
The ratables? Is that what you're
Not
asking?
rate, the tax rate for your district.
Yes.
Are you going to increase? Do you know what that increase is?
Our preliminary budget is 2%.
So you're right on the cap.
We're at the cap, we're not using bank caps. That's what we've preliminarily approved.
And
Yes.
we're also not using bank cap that's available and a healthcare cost adjustment that's available to us. We are not using either of those.
You know, I remember when I was in the district, every 5 years, we kind of readjusted the healthcare contribution from
No.
employees. Have you done that year?
No, everything's really set by statute now. There's not that, there's options. So what's set by statute is going to cap and then allowing an increase above cap for the bank cap available, which is from prior years of unused tax increases, and then from the healthcare cost adjustment if you qualify, and we do qualify for that because of our healthcare cost. But we are not using either of those. We did a full, we've done budget presentations at the last 3 to 4 board meetings. So this is the first meeting that we don't have a presentation that answers all of these questions, but the former previous presentations are listed on our website, and you can see on those slides additional details. And then at the public budget hearing at the next meeting, we'll have another PowerPoint presentation for that, because at this point, the budget was submitted to the county for their approval. And they have approved it as it's set.
So, first, I want to thank you for coming out, because we really don't get a lot of people to come out. And I know I've seen you at board meetings before, so I do want to say thank you to that. I also want to say thank you for working with the state. I've done it too, and it is thankless and really a crazy process. And we appreciate it. We're taxpayers too, and you know, we've sat here, I've sat here for 10 years and gone through the process, and if the state tells us they're going to give us, I'm just going to say a number, 50 million, and then they only cut us a check for 45 million, what do we do? We still have to meet payroll, we still have to. Oh, I understand, but that's why I'm glad that you come out. I'm glad that you have the comments. I'm glad you're working with the state. And I wish, you know, you would come out more and more members would come out, because, you know, we honestly, we need to hear from you. We need to hear the comments. We need to hear the feedback. And I know you do. I know you do. And I just want to say that
That's how strongly, but, you know, we don't want to use the heavy hand. And we don't want a lot of people in here sad and screaming.
and we don't want that either.
No,
We don't want that either.
And I don't think that accomplishes.
It does not.
So I know that's what.
All I want to say is would it be an opportunity for the first time in Galloway, the total tax package to go down, not just state. The county's going down, the township is going down, and the region is going down. So the only entity going up is this board's up. That's my thing.
One of the things that we presented at the last meeting was with the change in ratables and with the change in the way the regional tax works for the regional districts and the local districts. The regional district is going to cap, but based on the way the formula is calculated for the district, Galloway's going out, but they are raising their budget and going to cap.
Right.
We are also going to cap. The net effect of both districts going to cap is still a decrease. And if the net decrease of, I want to say off the top of my head, about $42 for a home assessment, $200,000. So that's with both districts going to cap. The net effect is still a decrease, so that is correct.
Many businesses, senior officer retired from a major corporation, still dividing down, cost per people up, all years, but any state figures I have in 2017. Just a question. And I understand there's 80% fixed costs, that's the way those go. It's there, I understand. But we're asking in any way to try to minimize that impact.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep discussing it with the state.
What?
Keep discussing it with the state.
Oh,
If they're
We
the
all
ones
You know, Senator Connors were up there.
mandate, yeah.
Thank you again. Is there any other public comment? Do we have some new business?
Under new business, the first item I believe is the easier one. It is to approve the revised 2018-2019 school calendar, which basically takes the 2 days when we had to close school for predicted inclement weather and just add them to the end of the year, making the last day of school June 18th. The second item is to look at the 1920 calendar, and I provided for the board 3 different options. It's 3-day spring break, a 4-day spring break, and a 6-day spring break. All 3 of these options include specifics, how we would make up inclement weather or other emergency closings. Although I did not do a formal survey, I did elicit a lot of informal feedback regarding the calendar. In terms of 3 versus 4 versus 6 days, their opinions are all over the place. The one thing I did here was letting people know how we will make up the day when we have to close does help them plan. So that is detailed on the bottom of our calendar. The one thing I will mention is Greater Ed's calendar does that detail of how they will make up days. Their goal is to not move graduation, to maintain June 19th. However, in their calendar, 5 closings, they have a way to have graduation stay on June 19th. If you hit the 6th day, then they too will have to adjust. Our calendar, all 3 of them, don't keep middle school promotional ceremonies on the same day because we've never seen it as quite a big deal as a high school graduation. So I just wanted to point that out. Finally, I will say the vote tonight on item 1, only 1 reading is needed because it's a minor revision, but for next year's calendar, it does take 2 readings. So the goal is that based on any feedback tonight and between now and when we send the April 29th agenda home, it would be great to know where the board stands to not have to have all 3 options on the agenda again next time.
So I'm going to solicit feedback from each board member whether they would prefer option A, B, or C for the 1920 school calendar, so we would know, and then I'll ask for a motion for items 1 and 2. Dr. Parmenter? C. C. Mrs. Avery?
I just have a question. Do we know when the state testing is next year or not?
I can tell you, I can't give you the exact dates, Mrs. Avery, but Mrs. Napoli, who's the coordinator, did see the calendar, and it was something related to an early dismissal day that she asked me to change, and I did. So other than that, as far as I know, we are fine, because there's a testing window, and so you have the ability to work around however you do spring break.
Okay. I'm gonna go with B.
Thank you. Mr. Gregg?
I'm really split between B and C.
Okay. I would choose option A because I think that getting out sooner is more beneficial for the children. Mr. Hicks? Mrs. Goldberg? Mr. Norton? Dr. Bashir, I'm sorry? B. Mr. Gentile?
B.
Okay. So we know it's not A. And
I
since
do not hear everybody, so that's okay. I'll get it from Joy.
I have 2 for A, 3 for B, 3 for C, and 1 for either B or C. So unfortunately, you're deciding this, you are now deciding vote.
I will also say this, you can also make changes within these options, and I'll just put something on the table. One of the things that several administrators, when I sent them drafts, and some other people have commented to me, is all the days we take off in the fall. And if we could reduce some of them, we could potentially do a new option like B or C and leave off some of those days. I know there's a lot of different opinions when you get into things like federal holidays. I will mention Columbus Day, and I will also mention Veterans Day. And I know the board is great supporters of veterans. I will say that when I talk to the veterans, they have no problem with us opening school as long as we do things to educate the children and honor the veterans. And November is a choppy month, but a lot of November we don't have control over. We do not have control over Thanksgiving. We do not have control over the NJEA convention. We did move, just to remind you, the Fall Staff Development Day from a Friday in October to Election Day, and that's a school safety measure because 2 of our schools are used for voting. So I'll just toss that out there. There are some other things we could adjust to accomplish both President Carmen and Vice President State's comments, getting out earlier is better, and also give a little more break. So I'll just toss that out there and just mix it up a little more.
Okay, so,
Can I make a comment, please?
yes,
The way I look at it, if it was gonna be a difference of a week with the C option or the B option, then I would be for, getting out of it, but it's 3 days. So I see it more of a benefit for the longer vacation period during the spring, because it's not really hurting that much in June. It's 3 days. I don't think that's that big of a sacrifice, considering a lot of times when we have bad weather, we go longer than this. So I think the 18th as a max is a good middle of the month period. So that's what I'm saying.
I would like to say that if you look at option C, okay, if there's more than 1 snow day, you're taking away the Easter, that spring break. So if we have a year where there's like 5 snow days, that week's out by the wayside, and then you get into the whole thing with people who make plans,
right,
adults and children.
right.
And Mrs. Avery, I'll make 2 comments. In terms of trying to do the longer spring break, one of the things I hear is that many of the local districts have the full week off, and it is placing our staff members who live in those communities in a challenging situation with their own children. And I think I mentioned to the board earlier that everyone in the constituency is going to the full week except Port Republic. Now, in terms of people making plans, in terms of staff, it would be made very clear to staff that this is outlined on the calendar. And if you decide to make plans to go away, please take trip insurance or save your personal days, because I will not be granting no pay days or anything like that, and people would have to plan accordingly. And that's part of whichever version it is. I think starting this practice of telling people this is how we're handling the days will calm some of them that get excited when we close.
But
So I could argue this any way, shape, or form.
But wouldn't you also have the option of Saturday schools if you had excessive snow days?
There is nothing in the contract that says you cannot open on a Saturday. I know some districts that have had to do it when they are in dire straits of inclement weather or other emergency closing and hitting June 30th, and my understanding is attendance is abysmal. So although it is legally an option, it is something we try to avoid.
Any other comments? So do you need an option from us this evening for a second reading?
So, Mrs. Carmen, my feeling is we have some time before the Friday that I send this home. So I will reach back out via email or phone calls and say, do you have any other thoughts? If anybody looks back at any of them and says, would you do this day for that day? Please let me know that. And then ultimately, I'll, bring back a calendar and we'll go from there.
Okay. So it'll either be option B or C or some variation of those two. Definitely not option A. And may I have a motion to approve item 1 under new business, please?
So,
Second.
Thank you. Is there any other board comment? Is there any public comment? May I have a roll call, please?
Dr. Parmenter? Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery?
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blau? Mr. Gentile?
yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Noor?
Yes.
Vice President Dace?
Yes.
And President Carmen.
Yes. Do we have executive session this evening? No. Going around the board, Dr. Parmenter?
I would like to reiterate my fervent wish that we have a more diverse hiring of certificated staff to replace the retirement positions.
Thank you. Mrs. Avery?
We have a lot of, I'm thinking we're about at 30 retirements this whole year.
There seems to be a lot this year.
There seems to be a lot.
Doesn't it seem that way?
I mean, it's,
We're hoping the celebration's going to be big.
I'm thinking it will be.
Mr. Gregg? Mr. Gentile? Dr. Bashir Black? Mr. Noor, welcome back.
I have a couple of things to comment about the budget. I think we need to be prepared in case we get onslaughted. For example, let's check out the numbers that they put on that sheet. You just have to pull out your tax line. Do that. Anybody here that tax has been here for 13 through 18 can probably verify that. But I would like to see also as a handout of mandated programs and amount funded, because we have so stinking many mandates that we get nothing for, and they keep coming every year, and we don't get any relief for that. They don't get that.
But I think that would be part of a presentation, not a handout, right? Or put it in the agenda, not necessarily something that
We're
would
those
hand
kind
out.
of things in the presentation.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to be prepared because
Agreed. Thank you. Mrs. Goldberg? Mr. Days?
John, how many years have I been saying state mandate, federal mandate? What are they? They tell you to do it, and they refuse to pay it, which is ridiculous. Why should we do something? Well, if the state tells you to do it, they should at least help pay something to it. And Senator Connors and Senator Ruth, but they're very open and receptive to that idea. So I hope we follow up with them again also.
But we've gotten no funding from the senators.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. They're receptive, as are we receptive, Mr. Days, but bottom line is we still get no funding.
that's really part of the policy. We used to have local legislators, and now we have legislators.
I think we're all preaching to the choir here, but yes.
Or Ocean County,
Agreed.
which is ridiculous. Yes, they'll change in 3 years.
And I have no comments, so can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Adjourn.